And in terms of the motivations, I guess the sort of kind of a long version of the explanation, but essentially, when I was a kid, I was wondering kind of what's the meaning of life, like why are we here, what's it all about, and I came to the conclusion that what really matters is trying to understand the right questions to ask. And the more that we can increase the scope and scale of human consciousness, the better we are able to ask these questions. And so I think that there's certain things that are necessary to ensure that the future is good. Some of those things are, in the long term, having long-term sustainable transport and sustainable energy generation. To be a spacefaring civilization, and for humanity to be out there among the stars and be a multiplanetary species. I mean, I think being a multiplanetary species and being out there among the stars is important for the long-term survival of humanity, and that's one reason, kind of like life insurance for life collectively, life as we know it. But then the part that I find personally most motivating is that it creates a sense of adventure, and it makes people excited about the future. If you consider two futures, one where we are forever confined to Earth until eventually something terrible happens, or another future where we are out there on many planets, maybe even going beyond the solar system, I think that second version is incredibly exciting and inspiring, and there need to be reasons to get up in the morning. Life can't just be about solving problems. Otherwise, what's the point? There's got to be things that people find inspiring and make life worth living.
Big market here in China. What's your advice for them?
I mean, I do think that, in terms of creating a company, what Edison said, which was like it's 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration, is true. So a lot of it in creating a company is execution. Like, you start off with an idea, and that idea is mostly wrong. And then you adapt that idea and keep refining it, and you listen to criticism. Some criticism you discard, try to discard the wrong criticism, try to listen to the correct criticism, and then engage in sort of a recursive self-improvement and constantly refining it and making it better. And you have to work super hard, and that's very important. And then just keep iterating on a loop which says, am I doing something useful for other people? Because that's what a company is supposed to do. A company is just a group of people gathered together to produce a product or service. And a company should only exist if that product or service is truly useful to customers.
You have to make it compelling. So,
yes, exactly.
And this is really at the key of Tesla. It is a car that you will covet, that you want to drive. That happens to be very good for the environment.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is sort of general advice I'd give to people starting companies, to entrepreneurs in general, is really focus on making a product that your customers love. And it's so rare that you can buy a product and you love the product when you bought it. There are very few things that fit into that category. And if you can come up with something like that, your business will be successful for sure. But it is generally true that innovation comes from questioning the way things have been done before. And if in the education system you're taught not to do that, that will inhibit entrepreneurship. There's colonies elsewhere in the solar system and ultimately extend beyond our solar system. And so there's the defensive reason of protecting the future of humanity, ensuring that the light of consciousness is not extinguished should some calamity befall Earth. That's the defensive reason. But personally, I find what gets me more excited is the fact that this would be an incredible adventure. I mean, it would be like the greatest adventure ever. And it would be exciting and inspiring. And there need to be things that excite and inspire people. There have to be, reasons why you get up in the morning. It can't just be solving problems. It's got to be, something great's going to happen in the future.
People want to be more like you.
Really?
So And you know what? For the fate of humankind, I think it would be great to have more Elon Musks. What do we need to do to become more like Elon?
I don't know if it's, I think it maybe sounds better than it is. There's a friend of mine who's got a great saying about creating a company. Trying to build a company and have it succeed is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. Well, so, I mean, what tends to happen is it's sort of quite exciting for the first several months of starting a company. Yeah. And then reality sets in, things don't go as well as planned, customers aren't signing up, the technology or the product isn't working as well as you thought. Yeah. And then that can sometimes be compounded by a recession, and it can be very, very painful for several years. Frankly, starting a company, I would advise people to have a high pain tolerance.
Yeah, yeah. Do you fear that maybe in this generation or the younger generation that they don't have that perseverance and grit to take on these really tough challenges?
I think some people do, and but no, I think it is definitely true that, I mean, maybe there are occasionally companies that get created where there's not an extended period of extreme pain, but I'm not aware of very many of such instances. So, but I do think that new great entrepreneurs are born every day, and we'll continue to see amazing companies get built. Yeah, but I would definitely advise people who are starting a company to expect a long period of quite high difficulty. But I mean, as long as people stay super focused on creating the absolute best product or service that really delights their end customer, if they stay focused on that, then if you get it such that your customers want you to succeed, then you probably will.
All right, you have to focus on the customer and delivering for them.
Yeah, make sure if your customers love you, your odds of success are dramatically higher.
Yeah, so I noticed I picked up two kind of themes from what you were discussing. One was somewhat audacious goals, and the other was, I don't think I heard you use the word profit in anything that you spoke about. You seem to be, each thing is pointed at like reinvigorating an industry or bringing back space missions. How much of your success do you attribute to having really audacious goals, or versus just not being focused on the short term, money coming in or investors?
Unfortunately, one does have to be focused on the short term and money coming in when creating a company, because otherwise the company will die. So I think that a lot of times people think like creating a company is going to be fun. I would say it's not. It's really not that fun. I mean, there are periods of fun, and there are periods of where it's just awful. And particularly if you're the CEO of the company, you actually have a distillation of all the worst problems in the company. There's no point in spending your time on things that are going right. So you only spend your time on things that are going wrong. And there are things that are going wrong that other people can't take care of. So you have like the worst. You have a filter for the crappiest problem in the company, the most pernicious and painful problem. So I wouldn't say I think you have to feel quite compelled to do it, and have a fairly high pain threshold. And there's a friend of mine who says like starting a company is like staring into the abyss and eating glass. There's some truth to that. The staring into the abyss part is that you're going to be constantly facing the extermination of the company. Because most startups fail. It's like 90%, arguably 99% of startups fail. So, that's the staring into the abyss part. You're constantly saying, okay, if I don't get this right, the company will die. And then the eating glass part is you've got to do the problems. You've got to work on the problems that the company needs you to work on, not the problems you want to work on. And so that's you end up working on problems that you'd really wish you weren't working on. And so that's the eating glass part. And that goes on for a long time.
So how do you keep your focus on the big picture when you're constantly faced with, we could be out of business in a month?
Well, it's just a very small percentage of mental energy is on the big picture. Like you know where you're generally heading for, and the actual path is going to be some sort of zigzaggy thing in that direction. You try not to deviate too far from the path, that you want to be on, but you're going to have to do that to some degree. But I don't want to diminish the. I mean, I think the profit motive is a good one if the rules of an industry are properly set up. So there's nothing fundamentally wrong with profit. In fact, profit just means that people are paying you more for whatever you're doing than you're spending to create it. That's a good thing. and if that's not the case, then you'll be out of business, and rightfully so. Because you're not adding enough value. Now, there are cases, of course, where people will do bad things in order to achieve profit, but that's actually quite unusual. I mean, because usually the rules are set up mostly correctly, like not completely, but mostly correctly.
How do you spend your days now? Like, what do you allocate most of your time to?
My time is mostly split between SpaceX and Tesla, and of course I try to spend a part of every week at OpenAI. Basically half a day at OpenAI most weeks. But other than that, it's really SpaceX and Tesla.
And what do you do when you're at SpaceX or Tesla? Like, what does your time look like there?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think a lot of people think I must spend a lot of time with media or on businessy things, but actually almost all my time, like 80% of it is spent on engineering and design. Engineering and design, so it's developing next generation product. That's 80% of it.
You probably don't remember this, a very long time ago, many, many years, you took me on a tour of SpaceX. And the most impressive thing was that you knew every detail of the rocket and every piece of engineering that went into it. And I don't think many people get that about you.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think I'm kind of a business person or something, which is fine. Like, business is fine, but but really, it's it's like at SpaceX. Gwen Shotwell is Chief Operating Officer. She kind of manages legal, finance, sales, and kind of general business activity. And then my time is almost entirely with the engineering team, working on improving the Falcon 9 and the Dragon spacecraft, and developing the Mars colonial architecture. And then at Tesla, it's working on the Model 3 and some in the design studio, typically half a day a week, dealing with aesthetics and look and feel things, and then most of the rest of the week is just going through engineering of the car itself, as well as engineering of the factory.
How should someone figure out how they can be most useful?
Whatever this thing is that you're trying to create, what would be the utility delta compared to the current state of the art times how many people it would affect? So that's why I think having something that makes a big difference but affects a sort of small to moderate number of people is great, as is something that makes even a small difference but affects a vast number of people. Like the area under the curve.
Under the curve.
Yeah, exactly. The area under the curve would actually be